Is the singularity near?
The military-industrial complex.
The truth is out there.
The seven mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods,
catapult to propaganda.
From a mostly secure, undisclosed split-level location on a cul-de-sac somewhere in the heartland of America, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
God created the Jubilee in the law when he handed it to Moses, and it's kind of a reset. Everything gets reset. Debts are forgiven and discharged in full. And there is one more Jubilee that is coming that will be the ultimate, the final Jubilee, as it were. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Our guest is an evangelist. He has been in ministry since 1983, speaks on prophecy frequently, and has written a number of books dealing with prophecy, the sevenfold promise of his soon coming, the Revelation, and the topic of today's discussion, newly revised for 2016, God's Final Jubilee, Jesus returns to claim the earth. We welcome to the program for the first time, Dan Goodwin. Dan, welcome.
Yes, Brother Derek, it's an honor to be with you, and I consider you a new friend, and I've been watching your programs and just checking you out, and I like what I see, and it's an honor to be with you today and be able to talk about some of these exciting things.
Well, I appreciate that. I consider what I do a blessing because I just have a curious mind, and so I get to ask questions of people who are a lot smarter or better studied than I am and find out the way things work. So this is, for me, this is a true blessing. The word Jubilee has a different meaning, I think, in our culture today than what God intended originally. My first exposure to the word is through the word Jubilee, that is through my hobby as a barbershop quartet singer. Their song about the Alabama Jubilee. But that's not quite the way the word, the intention of the word as it was given from Yahweh to Moses. So what is a Jubilee in the biblical sense?
Yeah. You're right. Today, Jubilee, even in some of the songs that we sing, even church songs, Jubilee's just become an exclamation of excitement. Oh, Jubilee. And, it is an exciting time. And I guess in a way it comes from the Jubilee. But yeah, I went to Bible college. I graduated. I've got a bachelor's degree. I couldn't have spoke 2 minutes on the Jubilee. That's the honest truth. I couldn't have spoke 2 minutes on a Jubilee. And I was a preacher. And but in recent years, I've studied this thing. This thing about the Jubilee, and that's the title of the book, God's Final Jubilee. I think it's the crux of the whole thing, and I think it's what so many of us have missed. This Jubilee is the key to understanding this whole thing, the seven feasts and the Jubilee. What I realized recently was the Jubilee is actually intertwined with the seven feasts. The sixth feast is the Day of Atonement, which the Jews call Yom Kippur. Every 49 years, that Yom Kippur is a Jubilee. So this thing about the Jubilee is really something. Let me explain let me give my way of explaining the Jubilee. There are three main Sabbaths in the Bible. Of course, we all know the first one, the seventh day, all the way back to Genesis. The seventh day is a day of rest. It's the Sabbath. But in the Bible days, they couldn't even pick up a stick, couldn't even carry firewood for your fire. I mean, everything had to be done the night before. You couldn't cook a meal. You couldn't go to the store. I mean, it was a pretty big deal. Sabbath was everything shut down. It was the day of rest. So that's the first major Sabbath in the Bible. The Jubilee is a Sabbath. And the second Sabbath in the Bible, we all understand better now because of a man named Jonathan Cahn, who wrote a book called The Harbinger. And because of that Harbinger book, many people began to understand what they call the Shmita, or what the Shmita is. It's a sabbatical year. That's what I call it. I believe that's what God calls it in the Bible. It's a sabbatical year. Every seventh year, the Jews would not till their ground. They wouldn't plant their garden. They wouldn't plant any seeds. They would let the land rest. So it was a day of rest for the land. Not only that, but all the animals would rest, the servants would rest, the slaves, the bondservants would rest. It was a day of rest, and it was trusting God to take care of you, meet your needs, and you let the land rest, and you gave reverence to God, and so that's the second Sabbath. The first is the 7-day Sabbath. The second is the 7th year Sabbath. Now realize an entire year you didn't plant your garden, so you had to live by faith, and you had to trust that God would take care of you. And all the servants, all the bond servants. I hope your audience understands. We're not talking about slaves here. A lot of people misunderstand it. They think these were slaves. These were not slaves. These were bond servants. Huge difference in a slave and a bond servant. A slave is one who becomes a slave without his choice. He's caught, or he becomes a slave, not of his choice. A bond slave is somebody who owed money and couldn't pay his debt, so he would have to sell himself, his labors, to his debtors in order to pay his debt off. By the way, that's a pretty good deal. In England in the 1800s, you went to jail, you went to debtor's prison. I'll tell you what, I'd rather be a bondservant and work somebody's garden and live in a house and eat food and then go to debtor's prison, where how are you going to pay your debt in debtor's prison?
It makes no sense.
Right. So that was God's system. And so a bondservant would work for somebody to pay off his debt, and he was taken care of. He had a house to live in. His family would be there. It's not like the movie Roots. Everybody misunderstands this stuff. And, everybody watches the movie Roots, and they think that's what these bondservants were in Israel. That's not it at all. So on that second Sabbath, the 7-year Sabbath, these bondservants would be set free. That's a pretty big deal. If you were a bondservant, you were set free on that day. Now, you didn't have to leave. You could continue to work for that guy, and a lot of them did. But you no longer owed that money, and your slate was wiped clean. And that's a nice system. Mm-hmm. And that kept people from being in debt all their life. And by the way, I'll tell you what else that did. That kept lenders from being foolish with their lending like they are today.
Right.
Because if you lended money to somebody and you knew that 2 years from now is the sabbatical year, that guy is going to he'll no longer owe you that money. Guess what? I'm not going to lend him money that he can't pay back quick. I mean, so it works both ways, doesn't it? It doesn't just free the borrower. It also puts some common sense and some responsibility into the lender, and he's going to be a little bit more careful lending. So that's just a side note here. But this is all stuff you begin to learn when you study these things.
It also prevented those who lent money from creating a class of perpetual debt slaves, which is the situation that we have in the United States right now.
Yeah. Kind of like a country I'm thinking of called America.
Yes, amen.
Americans are even rich people.
Yeah.
And Dave Ramsey needs to get a hold of this. Maybe he already has it, but I have a thing that I tell people. It doesn't matter how much money you make. The more money we make, the more money we can borrow. The people with the big jobs and the big money jobs and the big money coming in, they're just as much in debt as everybody else.
Right.
It's sad, it really is, but it's this system that we're all in here, and we go borrow money. We get a big job, we make a bunch of money, we go buy a huge house, we buy big cars, and we're debtors. And what a disaster it is. So that's the second Sabbath. That second Sabbath, what happens is the bondservants are set free. They no longer owe their debt, and all debt is forgiven. So that's pretty exciting. And the land lies dormant. They don't plant the gardens, and it gives the land a chance to rest. And by the way, that helps get the nutrients back into the soil. And now we've learned that we deplete the soil, and now we use fertilizers and stuff. Man has found a way to get away from that 7-year let the land rest. And I'm not sure that's such a good idea, but we put fertilizers and we rotate crops. We have found ways to keep using that same soil year after year after year. But all right, now back to the question. The third Sabbath is the big one. It's the Jubilee. So we have the 7-day Sabbath. We have the 7-year Sabbath of the land. Then we have the 7 times 7, the 49-year Sabbath that you read about in Leviticus chapter 25. That's a Jubilee. Now, that's another huge Sabbath, but there's something different about this one. What happens on this one, all right, the servants are set free. All the bondservants, their debt is forgiven. They're set free. But also, this one has to do with the property. And that's why this is such an important thing to understand when studying Bible prophecy. This has to do with the planet. This has to do with property. So what happened on the Jubilee, on that 49th year, the trumpet of the Jubilee is sounded on the Day of Atonement, which is the 15th day of the month Tishri. The trumpet of the Jubilee is sounded on that 49th year, and all the bondservants are set free, just like they would be on the 7th year. All the debt is forgiven, but something else happens. All property would go back to the original owner. And for instance, Brother Derek, if you happen to be a Hebrew in Bible days, and you had sold your property, or maybe you owed money and you lost it. I mean, you lost your property because you couldn't pay the taxes or whatever. On the Jubilee year, you became a landowner. You got that title deed back free and clear with your name on it, and you became the owner of that property again. It didn't matter who was on it. Didn't matter how much money he had. They had to move off your property, or they had to begin renting to you, whatever. So that's the Jubilee. Now, what's so big about this Jubilee is that's what's getting ready to happen. When Jesus Christ comes back on the white horse, now this is at the end of the 70th week. This is after the rapture. This is after the tribulation period. This is after all this takes place. At the end, Jesus comes back at the end, Revelation 19:11, on the white stallion. And I'm coming with them, and so are you. And we're coming back to this earth. He's going to end the battle of Armageddon with the word of his testimony. We're not even going to get to draw swords. And he's coming to the Mountain of Olives, and he's going to ride down the Mountain of Olives on the white horse, just like he did 2,000 years ago on that donkey. This time he's coming on a white horse. This time he's not coming to die on a cross or have a crown of thorns beat into his skull. This time he's coming as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and in his right hand, we're going to see that 7-sealed scroll that you see in Revelation chapter 5, that's in the right hand of he that sitteth on the throne, the 7-sealed book that the seals are open and the events take place down here during the tribulation period. What's happening there is the earth is being redeemed so that Christ can come back and take back possession of the planet. Fits a Jubilee perfectly, exactly what a Jubilee is. The kinsman redeemer, that's Jesus. He's going to come back. He's going to pay the debt that's owed on the planet. He's going to take back possession of the earth. He's coming back on, I believe, on a Jubilee with the scroll in his hand. He's going to take back possession of the earth. He's going to ride into Jerusalem, and he's going to set up the kingdom age, that the seventh feast, the Feast of Tabernacles. That will be the 1,000-year millennium. The kingdom age that's going to take place. And so that's what a Jubilee is. A Jubilee is that every 49 years, all property goes back to the original owner, the debt's forgiven, and the servants are set free. It's a reset button, a big reset button. And you get your property back. You're debt free. It's like a fresh start. It's almost like a generation, isn't it? And by the way, that next one on the calendar, that's why the book is called God's Final Jubilee. You said it a few minutes ago. This is the final one. Well, how do we know that? Well, maybe you can't be dogmatic about it, but my good, this is number 70. If you start with Moses, 1500 BC, you work forward to the 2000th year of the church age. That's 3,500 years. Divide that by 50 because it's 49 years, and then you include the 50th year, which is the entire 50th year is the Jubilee. So it's a 50-year cycle. You divide 3,500 by 50, and you get 70. So whenever the Jubilee is, and I think it's this year or next year, but whenever it is, what matters is not when it is. What matters is the next one is it. It's the final Jubilee. It's number 70. I'll ask people when I'm doing a prophecy conference, I'll ask them to raise your hand. I'll say, how many think there's going to be 71 Jubilees? And nobody raises their hand. They kind of look at each other. Nobody believes that. Seven is God's number. There's going to be 7,000 years of human history. 4,000 in the Old Testament, 2,000 in the church age, 1,000 years of the millennial kingdom age. That's it. That's 7,000 years. There's going to be 70 Jubilees. There are 7 days in a week. There are seven colors in the rainbow. There's 7 notes on a piano. I mean, that's God's number. This is going to be the final Jubilee, my brother, and I believe it's coming up here pretty soon.
Well, I love the picture of it. As you were discussing it snapped into place. What exactly is taking place here with the Jubilee? Okay, debts are canceled, and for us, of course, that would be the bondage that we are in to sin. Of course, that price is paid on the cross, but this is where we are released from the indentured servitude that we've been under, in a manner of speaking,
right.
and the title.
Isn't that powerful? Just thinking about that.
Yeah, and think about this too. And I'm sure you have, because you've put a lot more time and thought into this than I have. But one of the things that struck me years ago, as in thinking about the role of Christians in politics, for example, when Satan took Jesus, when Jesus was out in the desert and he was being tempted during those 40 days, one of the temptations was Satan saying, all these kingdoms are mine, I give them to whomever I will, if you will just bow the knee to me. And of course, Jesus refused that, but he did not rebuke him and did not say, you don't have the right, which indicates to me
because
that
he did, because back in Genesis, Adam was given dominion of the world. When Adam sinned, he lost dominion. He lost the title deeds, what he lost. And Satan, who's now the god of this world, has the ownership. He's the god of this world. And that's why Jesus is coming back to reclaim the ownership of the planet. And that's what a Jubilee is.
That's fascinating. Now, you made reference to the Feast of Tabernacles and its representation of the millennial reign, the 1,000-year kingdom. There are 7 feasts, as you mentioned. How do these feasts relate to prophecy? What sort of conclusions can we draw about prophecy, or what sort of symbolism do they represent in terms of prophecy? I mean, what do the feasts tell us about God's timeline for his plan to reclaim the earth?
I think the 7th feast is God's prophetic calendar. And I think so many of us have grown up, of course, here in America. We're Gentile. We're the church age. We're Gentiles. And most of our life did not know anything except for Passover. We knew what Passover was because Christ died for our sins that day. And I knew a little bit about unleavened bread. I knew nothing about first fruits. I knew Pentecost because that's the power of God came. I saw that one. But I knew nothing about the Feast of Trumpets. I didn't know there was such a thing. I didn't know nothing about, I didn't know very much about any of these feasts. But what I've learned is, and I have a chapter in the book called 3 Ways to Interpret the Scriptures. And number 1 is the literal. Always look for the literal interpretation. There really were 7 literal churches in Revelation chapter 2 and 3. They really existed. But then there's a figurative interpretation. Now, this isn't too hard for people. Those 7 churches. Brother Derek, you've probably done some preaching and some teaching. Have you ever taught about not being a lukewarm Christian? Have you ever taught that before?
Well, I've not done an awful lot of preaching, but one of the things that Sharon and I did that led to where we are right now was we started writing a series of novels that we called the Laodicea Chronicles. So we did a little bit of study on the Church of Laodicea and those other churches, and I also I have heard smarter men than me teach on the churches in the book of Revelation and what they represent as far as the church age. So
you keep saying smarter men. You know why I write books? Because I can't remember stuff. So I write it down. So I don't consider myself smart. I really believe the Lord somehow gave me some of these things. I think these are things that that were always there, and just suddenly God shined the light on and said, hey, stupid, this is simple. Look at this. And there it is. Kind of like Daniel said, Lord, I don't understand this. And the Lord said, seal up the book, Daniel. It's not for you. Mm-hmm. It's for the last generation. Hey, right. That's us. Yeah. It's time to wake up and look at these things. So the literal interpretation, we understand that. Jonah was really swallowed by a whale. And Noah really did build an ark. Those are literal stories, but they're figurative also. The getting into the ark, that's a figurative lesson of salvation. You're getting in Christ, getting in the ark. And the 7 churches, they're figurative of the Christian life. And everybody's preached a sermon. Everybody's heard a sermon about don't be a lukewarm Christian. Do you know what? In the literal sense, that's not talking about a Christian at all. It's talking about a church. And he says, you're neither cold nor hot. You're lukewarm. He's talking to the church of Laodicea. And so is it wrong to take that out of context a little bit and use it figurative? No, of course it's not wrong. Paul did it. Jesus did it. Peter did it. Everybody. That's what the Bible's for. It's those truths in the Bible are there to use and to apply to our lives. And my Revelation study guide that I wrote, that's one of the biggest things that people compliment me on is not only do I give the timeline and I make it simple, but I give personal application at the end of each chapter. What does this mean to us? For instance, one place, God wipes away all tears from their eyes. I took that, and that's a prophetic book. That hasn't happened yet. And I take that and I say, look, God cares about us. He wipes our tears. God cares. I gave some application. Look, is there a mother in heaven that's weeping right now for you down here on the earth? Maybe your mom died a few years ago. Is she weeping tears in heaven right now? See, that's the figurative look there. Mm-hmm. And, so, but then the third way to look at the Bible is the prophetic. There's a prophetic lesson there. Now, sometimes it's hard to see, but the more I study prophecy and the more I get into this, it just seems like everything I look at now, there's a prophetic lesson. I've got a brand new book just come out a couple weeks ago called The Barley Harvest. In that book, I have read the feeding of the 5,000 story. I know I've read it 100 times. Never saw this. Did you know the feeding of the 5,000? He says that Passover was nigh. That means it was almost Passover. Mm-hmm. That means it's the month Abib or Nisan. That means, guess what? It's barley harvest time because that's when the barley harvest is. It's during Passover or first fruits. It's in that month. Wheat harvest is at Pentecost time. That's why that lad that had 5 loaves and 2 fishes, he had barley loaves. He didn't have wheat loaves. He had 5 barley loaves. It says that. 5 barley loaves. Okay. He didn't have wheat bread. And then he also had 2 fishes. Now add that together. 5 and 2 is what? 7. Mm-hmm. Now listen to this. When they get done eating, by the way, why are there 5,000 men there? Where's the women? Where's the children? I've always preached that they didn't count them. There was probably 20,000 people. They didn't count them. Right, yeah. Well, that sounds good, but I'm not sure I believe that anymore. The Bible says there were 3 times that all your Hebrew men had to assemble in Jerusalem. They could bring their wife if they want, but this was just for the men. The first time was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which took place the evening of Passover. Remember, it said Passover was nigh? Mm-hmm. Why are those 5,000 men there? Because they're getting ready to assemble, like they're supposed to, in Jerusalem. That's why they're there. Huh. And Jesus said, hey, we got to feed these guys. And they had the lad with the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. They all sit down. He feeds them all. They all finished eating, and there was all these leftovers. Remember how many baskets were left over?
12.
How many tribes is there? 12 tribes. Yeah. How many apostles? There's 12 apostles. 12. They're all there. All 12 of them are there. Every one of them got a basket full. Now, Brother Derek, you maybe never saw this before either. What's in the basket? They filled the baskets up with the fragments and the leftovers. Do you know what's in them?
Well, it'd be barley, if it's barley bread.
All right. How about the fish?
The fish?
No fish. I never saw that before.
Well, that's right. Okay. It was just
the fish?
The fish were gone.
What's the fish represent? You and me, brother.
That's right. Jesus was sending them out as fishers of men. Right.
There's a prophetic lesson there. Because barley, and I explain this in my barley book, The Barley Harvest, the barley is a type of Israel. The barley is Israel. And when the barley fills them baskets and the 12 tribes of Israel are ready for the 70th week, God will take the fish out. That's us. Now talk about a pre-trib rapture. Talk about another nail in the coffin to the pre-trib rapture belief. The fish are taken out. There's no fish in them 12 baskets. When the fish are, when God takes the fish out when the barley's ready. And they had 12 baskets full, because after the rapture, Israel has to be ready for the covenant. They have to be ready to accept their Messiah, which is going to be the false Messiah, the Antichrist. They've got to be ready for the temple, either before, during, or after the rapture. They get that temple's got to be ready.
Right.
They got. I believe the Jews at the rapture, or right before the rapture, I believe the Jews will be right where they were 2,000 years ago philosophically. What are they looking for? Peace. What were they looking for in Jesus' day? Peace. What were they looking for? To get rid of the Roman rule, get rid of these Romans.
Right.
Lord, wilt thou at this time restore unto us the kingdom of Israel? The kingdom? They were wanting to be established again as a sovereign nation without Roman rule. All these things, they wanted to have their temple going, and all these, they wanted their Messiah. And I think those same things are going to be in place. I think they are right now, are going to be in place when the rapture happens, because the barley is what God is looking at. God is not looking at the church to determine when the rapture is. I know everybody says, well, God has a number when the last person gets saved and the rapture will happen. There will, brother, there will be a last guy saved. I understand that. There's somebody's going to be the last guy saved, and then the trumpet sounds. I understand that. But I don't believe that's what God is looking at. I believe God's looking at the barley, and when the barley is ready, God takes us out of it, takes the fish out, and then you got your 12 tribes of Israel, you got the barley there. And so, in other words, there's a prophetic lesson there. So there's three ways to look at the Bible: literal, figurative, prophetic. And by the way, all three may differ, but all three are right. The churches in Revelation are literal churches, but they're also figurative, and they're also prophetic, I believe, of the entire church age, from the church age of Ephesus, which is Paul's day, all the way to the Laodicean church, which is you and me, brother. We're in it.
Yeah, Laodicea, which means human rights, which is
rights of the people.
Rights of the people. Yeah, it is.
I want my way. I want to marry whom I will. If I want to marry a man, I'll marry a man. Hey, that's where we are, isn't it?
It is. Vice President.
Hey, that's okay to talk about on your program, I hope.
Oh yeah, no trouble. We talk about that on Skywatch TV. We talk about it on our weekly Bible study as well that we post to the web. So, and it's not that we're trying to bash anybody. I mean, the Lord gave us all free will, and that means that there are. And I include myself in this because, there is none righteous, no, not one. But all of us have exercised our free will at times to sin. It's just we've entered a period now where it's almost Orwellian, that bad is good, good is bad. It's celebrated, it is embraced, and we are encouraged to take the Bible as suggestions, shall we say, rather than commands from the creator of the universe who spoke all things into existence. So it is a strange time in which we live, and human rights of the people trump the word of God in our modern society. I'll
tell you how far America has gone down the road. I posted a video on my Facebook page, God's Final Jubilee Facebook page. It was you know what they call a PSA on TV or a radio. You were in radio. You know what a PSA is.
Public service announcement. Right.
I posted a video from the 50s, black and white video. I posted on my page. It was several minutes long. They showed this boy getting picked up in a car by a man, and he took him fishing, and they talked about some things they shouldn't have talked about. This guy was a homosexual. This PSA from the government was explaining to young boys the dangers out there, and had the young boy asking somebody, well, what's wrong with these guys? He said they have a mental disorder. They have a mental problem.
Right.
Now, you and I know it's a sin problem.
Right.
Back in the 50s, they call it, but see the difference today? Then even the government understood these people need help. They need to be put in a medical institution and given some help. And now we're calling them normal. In fact, you're not normal if you got a problem with them.
Yeah. You're what's the word? Heteronormative? No, that's not word. What? There's a word out there that is supposed to indicate that you have a problem. Yeah, hetero. No, I can't. Well, anyway,
we're racist, I guess,
and obviously full of hatred. The thing that's really amazing.
If you're scared to have a man go in the bathroom with your granddaughter, there's something wrong with you, I guess.
Yeah. The thing, and I don't want to detour down this road for too long, but the thing that just makes my head explode is that on college campuses right now, the big topic among women's studies majors is that we, especially white men, are responsible for this patriarchy, which promotes what they call rape culture. Rape culture is the big term on campus, and even little things like holding a door open for a woman is just indicative of
that's sad.
The patriarchy, and so we're supposed to, the young women are being taught that everywhere they go, everything that a man does that is in any way perceived as condescending to the weaker sex, and I'll use that phrase in air quotes, is just indicative of our desire to continue the patriarchy, to continue oppressing them, and to further this rape culture that permeates our. But if you speak up and say, you know what, it's because of the rape culture that I don't want my daughter and granddaughter sharing a locker room with a guy who wears a dress, then suddenly you're a hate-filled bigot. Being a progressive means you never have to worry about cognitive dissonance because their brains are so open. I mean, their minds are so open that their brains have clearly fallen out. But this is even entered into our churches and into our Christian learning institutions. A gentleman named, and I can't remember his first name, but Dr. Piper, who's the president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University, maybe Everett, I think it's Everett Piper, wrote an essay last fall after he was approached following chapel services by a student at Oklahoma Wesleyan to complain about a sermon delivered on 1 Corinthians 13, which, anyone who's ever attended a wedding has probably heard the verses. 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient and kind, does not envy or boast, it is not arrogant or rude, etc., etc. The student literally came up to the president of the university, Oklahoma Wesleyan, a Christian institution, and said, well, that sermon made me feel bad. Like if I'm not, treating other people this way, that I should feel guilty for that. And I think that was wrong, that this speaker, this preacher should make me feel bad. It's like, wait a minute. The point of the gospel is to convict you of your sins.
Conviction, that's right.
It's to break you, to make you feel bad, but then to offer you the hope that comes with the salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. Yep. And furthermore, coming back around to our topic of prophecy and God's final Jubilee, that there will come a day when all of these debts will be canceled and title reverts to God, title for the earth reverts to God, and tears will be wiped away, all wounds healed, and the Lord will reign literally on earth from the New Jerusalem. But, if kids are going to Christian institutions and coming away with the idea that somehow the gospel is supposed to make them feel good about themselves, I mean, right. In a sense it does, brother, because that we are loved so much by the creator of the universe that knowing our rebellion from the very beginning of time, he chose to come and die for us anyway. I mean, what more validation do you need of your worth as a person?
Right.
And
that comes after we kneel at the cross.
Exactly.
And we receive that free gift. I'll never forget as long as I live, July 4th, 1981. I can take you to the place. Well, the house is gone now, but I could have took you to the room where I first understood my condition completely and understood the solution was not me or me doing something, but Jesus Christ who paid my sin debt. And I rushed to my knees. I believe I was saved before I got to my knees, but I rushed to my knees and bawling and crying like a baby. I was 21 years old and 1 year to go in the Navy, and got gloriously saved. And there's just a feeling that comes over you, and you just don't get over that. I don't ever want to get over that.
No, I accepted Jesus with my mouth, I think, when I was still a kid in 6th grade. A neighbor.
Yeah, you said a prayer or something.
Right. A neighbor had invited me to a little storefront Baptist church in Chicago, and we watched a film about prophecy, in fact. The film,
Thief in the night.
Thief in the night, right. I wish
Yes,
we'd all
sir.
been ready, yeah. But I really didn't understand what that meant, because for many years, my broadcasting career was on Top 40 radio, not just as an announcer, but later then as a music director. Which songs are we going to play that will draw the most listeners to us? And then a program director of a radio station in St. Louis. Hey, we need a radio station to sponsor the Gay Pride Parade. Well, hey, we'll do it. And I thought I was a Christian through all of that. Now, I'm not saying that we need to hate or ostracize or rebuke our brothers and sisters who are in that life, but we also need to recognize that we don't have the authority or the right to redefine what God has declared sin.
That's right.
So anyway, it was through a couple of spiritual boards to the side of my head, the 2x4 that wielded by the Holy Ghost to get me to wake up. But there was a point in my mid-30s where I felt that sea change, that moment where it's like, oh, okay. Now I know all of these doubts I've been walking around with. Well, what if the Bible is just a collection of myths? What if it has been rewritten time and time again to fit the political agenda of these various kings throughout the years? It suddenly was, boom. It took apologetics for me. I had to dig into apologetics. Okay, how do we know the texts have been preserved? How do we know these are the same texts that the disciples and the apostles wrote, et cetera, and all of that? So, I had to be the guy who had to be shown the evidence, but that aside now, so now we are where we should have been all along, and just praise God and thank Him for His patience with us, because none of us are guaranteed another day, and at any point along that road, prior to really understanding what it meant to be saved, or what being a disciple of Jesus Christ really means, I might have. My number might have been called at any moment, so you just never know. But coming back to your book, God's Final Jubilee, you address a couple of issues that I think are interesting, and there's one I know that is debated a lot, and you've got an opinion on this: the identity of the two witnesses in the book of Revelation who are killed and then raised up again on the third day, the whole world watching as the world parties, to celebrate their deaths. Who do you say they are, and why?
I say it's Elijah and Moses. I am 99.9% convinced of it. When you read Matthew chapter 17, beginning in verse 1, it says that after 6 days, of course, that's interesting. There you go with the prophetic again. After 6 days, he taketh Peter, James, and John up apart into a mountain. Mm-hmm. Now, there's your rapture. Again, I mean, the pre-tribulation rapture is on every page of that book. And here he is after 6 days, 6,000 years. Day is with the Lord is 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. After 6 days, he's telling us, after 6,000 years, I'm coming. I'm taking you out of here. He takes Peter, James, and John up apart. Apart from what? Apart from the world. We're going to be taken up. We're going to be taken off the world. And he takes them up there, and then he's transfigured before them. In other words, he gets his glorified body. And suddenly there appears two men talking with him. Now, Peter, James, and John knew exactly who they were. Mm-hmm. It was Elijah and it was Moses. Now, why wasn't it Enoch and Moses, or Enoch and Elijah?
That was going to be my question, especially because they were on Mount Hermon, which had a strong connection to Enoch through his interaction with the Watchers who came down at Mount Hermon. But Why Elijah? Why Moses?
I think it's Elijah and Moses, because you have to understand what the transfiguration was even about. Why did this happen? Why did God want us to see this? Why did he want Peter, James, and John to experience this? Here's what I believe. A witness has to have seen something. Brother Derek, if you get hauled into a courtroom to give an eyewitness account of a car accident, you get on the stand, and that lawyer says, "All right, Mr. Derek, you did you see this car come through the red light?" And you say, "Well, actually, my wife told me that it went through the red light." Mm-hmm. Guess what? They're going to throw you off the stand. They don't want to hear what you heard someone else say. You're an eyewitness. You got to tell them what you saw. Well, if you didn't see nothing, you can't be an eyewitness. The two witnesses during the tribulation period, and by the way, they're gonna come down at the rapture. A lot of prophecy people think they come at the middle and they die at the end. That's not true. They come at the beginning. When we go up, they come down. Want some more evidence of that?
Sure.
Matthew 17. When we go up, Peter, James, and John went up two men came down. You can wave to them on the way. We joke about that. But when we go up in the rapture, you wave because Elijah and Moses are coming down to the earth. They're going straight to Jerusalem. Their ministry is to the Jews and the Jews alone. And they're gonna be in Jerusalem for 1,260 days, 3.5 years. And they are going to start at the beginning. Now, what is their job? Their job is to give a witness about what they've seen. What have they seen? Well, if it wasn't for the transfiguration, they wouldn't have seen anything. What is Moses going to tell us? Did he see Jesus die on the cross? No. Did he see the resurrection? No. Did he? Well, he can't be on the witness stand. He didn't see anything. However, they saw Jesus in his resurrected body. They saw him in his glorified body. They spoke with him. Mm-hmm. I believe the two men in white apparel at the empty tomb is Moses and Elijah, because they had to witness the empty tomb, the resurrection. I believe it's Moses and Elijah, the two men in white apparel in Acts chapter 1 that you and I talked about earlier, when they say, "Why stand ye gazing? This same Jesus shall so come in like manner as he," where are they? They're on the Mountain of Olives. He's coming back to that Mountain of Olives. Mm-hmm. By the way, he's talking to the Jews. He's not telling them about the rapture. He's telling them about the second coming on the white horse. This same Jesus shall so come right back to this spot. That's not the rapture. That's the second coming at the end of the 7 years. And so those two men, Moses and Elijah, witnessed all these things. And they're coming back after the rapture, right at the rapture, to Jerusalem. And everyone's going to hate their guts. Yeah. I mean the TV people, the radio people, everybody, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, if they're not saved, they'll still be on the radio. Everybody's going to hate those two men. And the Bible says the whole world rejoices when they die. It didn't say all the lost people. It said the whole world. Right. Because the whole world is lost. We've been taken out. The saved people are gone. There are no saved people here during the first half. That's hard for people to grasp, and a lot of people email me about that. But I can prove it to you. You will not see people getting saved until after them 144,000 Jews get saved. And they're going to get saved upon the death and the resurrection of those two men, Moses and Elijah. They're going to come and they're going to preach for 1,260 days. Everybody hates them. Nobody can kill them. Fire can come out of their mouth. And the Antichrist is going to kill them right at the middle because God allows him to. Mm-hmm. The Antichrist kills them. They're left dead in the streets for 3.5 days. Now, that's symbolic also. Christ was in the grave 3 days. By the way, they die on Passover. I don't have time to get into it, but I can prove this. They die at Passover. And the same day Jesus died. Right. And they rise back to heaven the same day Jesus rose to heaven on the Feast of First Fruits. That's when the 144,000 Jewish men, remember I told you there was 3 times all your Jewish men have got assembled in Jerusalem? Right. You ever wonder why the 144,000 Jewish men all get saved the same minute? That used to baffle me. Why is that? Because they're all there, assembled, because they have to be there. They witness the death of those guys. They see them laying in the streets. They give gifts to one another. The Bible says they give gifts. It's like Christmas. They're celebrating that these guys are finally dead. We hated them. Why did they hate him? Because they were bringing conviction upon him. They were preaching Christ, preaching his death, his burial, his resurrection.
They're making us feel bad about ourselves.
Get up.
It's like the kid at Oklahoma Wesleyan. They're making us feel bad about ourselves.
Yeah. Well, thank God I felt bad about myself. July 4th, 1981. Thank God I felt bad about my sin, and I turned to Jesus and got saved. And you got to feel bad before you feel good.
Amen.
Or I got a problem with you. There's got to be conviction before you turn to Christ. So these guys are dead 3.5 days. Suddenly they get up. In fact, they leave them in the streets so that they can gloat over them. Mm-hmm. That's unheard of. You ever heard of that? I mean, the government leaves them there. They're so happy that they're dead. And then they get up and they ascend to heaven just like Jesus did 2,000 years ago. And guess who witnesses that? The 144,000, 12,000 Jewish men from each of the 12 tribes. They witness it. And here's what it says in Revelation 11. I think it's verse 13. It says, the remnant gave glory to the God of heaven. That's listen, you can't give glory to the God of heaven if you're not born again. Those men all understood right then that they were sinners. And here's what they said. Jesus was the Messiah. We get it now. I get it. And God opens their eyes and they understand and they trust in the Messiah. And that's when everything changes. It's been 3.5 years of peace in Israel while the world is at war. Revelation 6, the four horsemen, that's all death and bloodshed, but not for Israel. Israel's at peace. Until the Antichrist enters the temple, these two witnesses die, and then they rise back to heaven, and the Jews get saved. Can you imagine the Antichrist just a few hundred yards away in the temple, gloating and pumping his chest? I think I know who he is. But does that remind you of anybody who it's always about him, me, my, look what I did, look what I'm doing? He's in there and suddenly he hears a commotion outside and one of his aides comes in and says, Your Honor, or Sir, you're not going to believe this. Them Jews out there, they've just trusted in the Messiah of heaven, the Messiah of the Bible. And he's going to get so angry and so filled with hate. That's when he breaks the covenant and chases those Jews. And by the way, that's where Matthew 24, all the confusion about the rapture, the mid-trib and the post-trib, that's Matthew 24, where it says, Woe unto her who is within child in those days. Woe unto him who's on the rooftop. Don't go back in the house. He that is in the field, don't even go back in the house to get your cell phone. Run for your life. What are they talking about? They're talking about right there at the middle of the tribulation when the Jews get saved, 144,000, and the Antichrist breaks the covenant and declares war on the Jews. That's when they run for their lives. That begins the second half, the time of Jacob's trouble, the time of great tribulation that's never been, never will be a time like that. And that's what's coming upon Israel at that moment. That's a long Bible study in a matter of minutes there. But
well, and I know that we're only scratching the surface of it, and there's a lot more to it. But people have been studying this topic for 2,000 years and still haven't really come to a conclusion, a firm conclusion. We don't all agree on it yet, and I think that's by design, because even as we've talked about Acts chapter 1, the apostles who walked with Jesus, learned from Jesus, didn't understand the prophecies of his first coming. I think it's very possible that God is deliberately keeping some things from our full understanding until his second coming, because the principalities, powers, thrones, dominions that oppose us are far older and more intelligent than we are, and if we understood the prophecies perfectly, they likely would understand them even better and be able to fabricate a convincing lie.
I think God wanted every generation to think he could come in their lifetime.
Yeah.
Now, what you and I know right now about the 7 feasts, the 6,000-year earth, and then the 1,000-year millennium, you and I would not have been believing that. You and I would not have been looking for the rapture if we grew up in Roman days, because we'd know, oh no, this has got to be 6,000 years. But I think the Lord wanted people to be looking in every generation. But now look what we have today. It's like the book's been unsealed. It's just popping out at us now.
Yeah.
And it's just so simple now.
Well, even the church at Thessalonica thought that they'd missed it, and Paul had to write them a letter telling them to calm down, that it hadn't happened yet, because we've got the rebellion must come first, the apostasia must come first, the apostasy. And after that, the man of sin must be revealed.
Right.
So, so we still got some time to go. Well, Dan, this is a topic we could talk on for another hour easily. But in the interest of keeping these programs to a manageable length, we will break here. But not before I ask you, where can people find a copy of God's Final Jubilee and follow your ministry?
Okay, of course, all my stuff's on Amazon if you're an Amazon person, but my website, godsfinaljubilee.com, real simple, godsfinaljubilee.com. They can see us on a Facebook page. Love to talk to them. God's Final Jubilee Facebook. And so that's where they can get the book. All my books are on the godsfinaljubilee.com website. I got a brand new book just come out. We talked a little bit about that with the feeding of the 5,000. I'm telling you, that's just scratching the surface there. But that barley, the understanding of the barley has really opened up some more things for me. Dan Goodwin is the author of God's Final Jubilee and the forthcoming book, or brand new book, I should say, The Barley Harvest. We'll put links to his website and to the Facebook page in the show notes at vftb.net. Brother, good to make your acquaintance. Look forward to talking with you again. Yeah, I appreciate you so much. I've looked forward to this interview, and they never go the way you think they're going to. I had a ball. This was great. We had fun.
Dan Goodwin on the website godsfinaljubilee.com. I'll put a link to that in the show notes at vftb.net and a link to the Facebook page as well, so you can follow his ministry. It's an interesting way of presenting it when you consider the implications of the Jubilee, the land reverting to the original owner, title to the earth, reverting to, well, not just the original owner, but its creator from the temporary, the one who has temporary dominion over it, the God of this world, which, of course, is the entity that we refer to as Satan. So, speaking of prophecy and prophecy presentations, conferences, and so forth, Bob Ulrich and Gary Stearman from Prophecy Watchers came up to visit us this past week at Skywatch TV, and we can now announce that the live stream for the Rocky Mountain International Prophecy Conference, July 15th through the 17th, has been expanded. The number of presentations that will be streamed live has been increased from 32 to 40. So an increase of, that's 25% more? Yeah, if my math is right. 26 speakers, 40 presentations, streamed live over the course of the two-day conference. Now, of course, that means there are going to be some presentations streamed simultaneously. So to avoid making you choose between presentations that are running at the same time, all of the presentations will be archived for 45 days after the conference. So you'll have 6 weeks to go back and watch the ones that you couldn't watch in real time, which also means if you have to work or you got to go to sleep or something, during some of the presentations, you can go back and catch those after the fact. So it's there are 3 different packages available, one for the main ballroom, one for the Aspen Room, which is the main breakout room at the Marriott in Colorado Springs. And then there's a third package, which is a discount if you want access to all 40 presentations. Schedules will be posted soon, but for more information and to sign up if you're interested, log on to prophecywatchers.com. Prophecywatchers.com has all that information. A few things of note in the news, and I'm going to touch on these briefly. I'll probably cover much of this during some of the weekly updates, or daily updates rather, on Skywatch TV this coming week. If you haven't yet, check out the YouTube channel and subscribe to the Skywatch TV YouTube channel. I should also mention we've also got a new YouTube channel specifically for Sci Friday, which is the weekly program that Sharon and I produce. And basically, Sci Friday has taken the place of PID Radio. I mean, essentially, the topics we discuss on Sci Friday are the ones we would have covered on PID Radio. It's just that we do it now in a 28-minute, 30-second format instead of 1 hour. But just because of the time commitment involved in doing that and then having to do post-production on video, that's kind of where we're putting our effort. That and, of course, the Gilbert House Fellowship, and I'll talk more about that in just a bit. But anyway, some of the stories that we're looking at this week, there was an item that appeared at a website I look at, deals with questions of bioethics. And I found this really disturbing that the question is even being asked. The title of this article, Should Happy Demented People Be Euthanized? Should happy, demented people be euthanized? And when they're talking about demented, they mean dementia, seniors who are enduring Alzheimer's. The question is asked because there are some who will make out a living will when they are of sound mind and ask that they don't want life. Not only do they want they don't want life extending treatment, but they would want life ending treatment. As the culture of death expands its grip over the Western world, doctor-assisted suicide is becoming more and more the norm. It certainly is in Europe and in Canada. They've gone so far as to in the protocols for physicians in Canada, they are directing physicians who don't wish to be part of the taking of a human life to direct patients who want to end their lives to doctors who will. In other words, in Canada, physicians no longer have any grounds to object on a conscientious, to be a conscientious objector, basically, on religious grounds. The right to take someone's life, the right for someone to be made dead, trumps the right for physicians, nurses, and physicians' assistants to object on moral grounds. But the question is arguing, and the article cites a piece in the Journal of Medical Ethics, that if somebody makes out a living will, essentially, directing that their lives be ended should they lose capacity should they lose cognitive ability, drift into dementia, even if they appear to be happy and no longer want to end their lives, that their original choice should be honored. In other words, if today, being of sound mind, I say, if a doctor can ascertain that I am suffering from dementia, regardless of my state of mind at that time, I want you to kill me. These bioethicists are arguing that that choice should be honored, even if I should change my mind. If I found a suitably happy quality of life in coping with my dementia, these bioethicists are actually arguing that since you're no longer in your right mind, your original choice to die should be honored. Quoting from the piece, dementia patients do not choose what they forget. Therefore, what they still remember and the values they still express are not to be considered the ones with the highest priority. End quote. They're dismissing the possibility that somebody with dementia might have just changed their mind. It's like, hey, this isn't as bad as I thought. I know that I'm not who I once was, but I'm still reasonably happy, and I choose to live. These bioethicists are saying, no, that doesn't matter. They're not in their right mind anymore. What they chose before should be honored, and they should be put to death anyway. Isn't it horrible? I mean, this is astonishing that this question would even be asked. We'll definitely take that up this week on Skywatch TV. I think that is just reprehensible. Elon Musk, who made a really interesting comment about artificial intelligence some months ago, in saying that in trying to develop an artificial superintelligence, we are literally summoning the demon, made another comment over the weekend, toward the end of last week, said that there's a really good chance, this was at a gathering called the Code Conference, that there is just a 1 in billions chance that we're actually living in reality. That we are probably living in a video game created by some artificial superintelligence, that we are just simulations, digital reconstructions of something else, or perhaps just the imagination of some superintelligence. So Chuck Missler has addressed this and said that in a sense, we are living in a digital simulation of a greater reality. But the bottom line is that this is the reality into which we have been created. And we know who the creator is. Yahweh, the God of the Bible. In other words, you can call it a simulation if you want. That doesn't change the fact that it is reality. This is our reality. God created us and placed us in this reality. If you want to call it a video game or a holographic simulation, all you're doing is eliminating responsibility for your actions by detaching your actions in this world from any accountability or consequences. Well, it's all just a game. What does it really matter? You'll see in the upcoming interview with Opal Singleton, and you'll have heard in the interviews on this program with Opal Singleton, that this video game mindset that many youth have today is contributing to some of the things that they're engaging in. They don't see certain behavior as wrong because if it occurs in a video game context, such as Grand Theft Auto, where players are rewarded for paying real money, actual money, through the game to have virtual sex with a prostitute. But then to get your money back, your real money back, you in the game have to kill the prostitute. But kids are taught, well, it's not wrong. It's just a game. It's a video game. It's a holographic simulation. It's a digital reconstruction. It's not real. And this idea, this meme that we're just living in a hologram, or as Elon Musk says, one of the most respected and inventors of our era, that we're just living in a video game. He said 1 in billions chance that we're actually living in reality. How does it affect how a young, impressionable person processes his or her surroundings? It doesn't really matter. This is all just a game. This is not real reality, whatever that means. This is just a video game. It's a digital simulation. No, this is reality. Yahweh created us. If you want to call it his game, that's fine. But he created us to live in it. And since he left the instructions with us in the form of the Bible, perhaps you might consider living according to his rules. Well, there are a group of people who, most of whom have rejected the instruction book, and they're trying to find their own way through reality. This is the weekend of the 4th annual Contact in the Desert Conference at Joshua Tree, California. Interesting that they chose Joshua Tree as a location. It is a conference, an annual UFO conference, 4th annual, draws about 3,000 people to the high desert, and featured, because by the time you hear this, it will probably be over or near over. It runs through Monday, June 6th. Guest speakers include Giorgio Tsoukalos, Chariot of the Gods author Eric Von Daniken, George Norrie, host of Coast to Coast AM. Whitley Strieber is one of the featured speakers this week, and of course, he's the one who wrote Communion back in 1987. Another highlight, 40 scientists, historians, and researchers together in a panel discussing the CIA's release of previously classified UFO files from the 1940s through the 1960s. But the main takeaway from Contact in the Desert is that the people attending, the thousands of attendees there, are looking for answers. They don't quite understand the supernatural realm, but they're looking for someone to explain it to them. And unfortunately, they're getting answers from people who are looking at the phenomenon as not just a sci-fi or scientific issue, but as a spiritual issue. More of the people who are attending and speaking at this event, Nick Redfern, who's been a guest on this program, Travis Walton, of course, whose story was made into a movie starring Robert Patrick, Richard Dolan, Mike Barra, Jim Mars, Stanton Friedman, John Greenwald of the Black Vault Online, the Black Vault Archive, Graham Hancock, David Hatcher Childress, Robert Bivall, Giorgio Tsoukalos, of course, David Jacobs, Linda Moulton Howe, all of the stars, basically, of the UFO community are there. This has probably become the preeminent conference every year, the Contact in the Desert. Number of other folks who would be probably known to people who are, Jason Martell, another, known to people who are deep into the UFO phenomenon. But this is why we do what we do. Sharon and me, and of course our partners, colleagues at Skywatch TV, Tom Horn, Chris Putnam, who, by the way, Chris and Shelley should be here tomorrow, God willing, if all goes well, they've had a real rough couple of months. Josh and Christina Peck. This is why we do what we do, and this is why we address topics like this. This is why L.A. Marzulli is out there searching for evidence of the existence of the giants. This is why the UFO phenomenon even shows up on our radar, because conferences like Contact in the Desert are drawing thousands of people who are asking questions about the supernatural realm, and they're not getting answers from Christians, which is nearly criminal, because we've got the definitive book on the supernatural, the guidebook to the supernatural, as L.A. Marzulli puts it. So anyway, this the annual event going on, should be wrapped up by the time you hear this program, or very nearly. And, if we were addressing this, well, people love to have their ears scratched. So it's possible that many of these people would still be rejecting the gospel of Jesus Christ, but we've got to do a better job as Christians of addressing the issues that are drawing people to events like that. Also on Monday, June 6th, apparently the Satanic Temple in Los Angeles will create a giant pentagram around a city in Los Angeles County, Lancaster, using GPS technology to construct a giant pentagram. Don't know why this particular event is taking place. Maybe it's because of the date, 6616. That's probably the connection. I also don't know, based on the article that I looked at here, if this Satanic Temple is connected to the Satanic Temple in Detroit, which, if it is probably, more than anything else, just another means of attracting media attention. And it worked. We're talking about it. According to the report, the Satanists are doing this to raise awareness for Satanism. Well, good on them. They have their day now, while the God of this world is still temporarily the God of this world. But there's coming a day when, as Brother Dan said, the Jubilee will take place and title reverts to the owner. Something I think is even creepier than the Satanic Temple is the bizarre ritual that accompanied the opening of the largest tunnel constructed in human history. This is the Goddard, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, Gotthard, Goddard Base Tunnel, which was cut through the Alps into Switzerland. And I'm doing the rough numbers in my head. 57 kilometers, which is what, about 37, 38 miles, something like that. Cost over 11 billion euros to build. The longest, most expensive tunneling project in history. Took 17 years to complete, going through the Swiss Alps. The tunnel was inaugurated with a rather bizarre ceremony that was, I don't know, it looked like something from the opening of one of the recent Olympic Games. I mean, dancers and people in well, some of these dancers were dressed like they were like shooting a commercial for Fruit of the Loom. I mean, in underwear. But then it got really sexual and weird, and then they've got a guy dressed as a goat or a goat god who becomes the center of attention as all of the other dancers dressed in weird garb bow down and venerate him. Really, really strange. You had people in procession carrying horned skulls as if they're religious artifacts, women dressed in gauzy white gowns, putting their hands on their foreheads like they were, small little horns. It was really strange. What this has to do with the opening of a tunnel under the Alps is beyond me, but and I don't pretend to understand the symbolism involved here, although the goat god or goat demon seems pretty clear to me to be a reference of the goat demons that the Israelites were accused of worshiping in the desert. Vigilant Citizen has an article about this, vigilantcitizen.com. So if you want to see some of the pictures and watch some of the video, but again, if nothing else, what this proves is that as Western civilization moves further and further into a post-Christian world, a post-Christian era, rather. We are not moving into, sadly for Richard Dawkins and his followers, an age of enlightened atheism. We are moving back into paganism. Back into paganism, which we discussed with Sheila Zielinski when she was at Skywatch TV some time back, talking about her book, Green Gospel, and an event here in the United States follows along with that we are moving more and more into that pagan era in which we are venerating the creation instead of the creator. In California, a bill that was passed by 2 Senate committees there died on the Senate floor because it wasn't taken up for a vote before the close of their session last week. The bill can be brought up again in the future, either by amending the rules to allow it to be brought forward again, or by doing the old legislative trick of gutting and amending another bill. In other words, another bill with a completely different title or purpose can be amended to basically throw out the entire text of that bill and the text of this bill that died on a procedural basis substituted in place. U.S. Congress does that, and this might do it. What this bill did was it would have allowed the state of California to take legal action against persons or businesses that committed what the bill calls climate change fraud. Climate change fraud under California's unfair competition law. So if businesses engaged in practices that under the state of California or under the, this is such a broad definition. You could almost make anything fit this. If the attorney general or the district's attorney in California decided that a business was engaging in practices that gave it an unfair advantage by perpetuating climate change fraud, they could be prosecuted. But the bill was amended to change the statute of limitations that exists under the unfair competition law. Under the unfair competition law in California, there's a 4-year statute of limitations. You can't be prosecuted for anything going back further than 2012. But under this new bill, which again cleared 2 Senate committees and was on the floor of the Senate just awaiting a vote when the session ended, there would be no statute of limitations. That would be like giving the IRS permission to not just edit or audit, rather, my taxes, but my father's taxes and his father's taxes going back to 1913 or whenever the income tax was created. This is absolutely crazy, but it's an example of how this climate change worldview is not scientific. It's really a religion, which is the point of Sheila Zielinski's book, Green Gospel. It is earth worship. And they are trying to define any question of the science behind the climate change true believers, the climate change agenda, as heresy. This is this is the junction of where church meets state. Earth worship meets the power of the state, and they're trying to weld it together. In fact, there is a group of 17 state attorneys general, including California's Attorney General Kamala Harris, that have joined forces to try to prosecute climate change skeptics. 4 prosecutors have launched investigations into ExxonMobil for climate change fraud, whatever that means. We've heard talk about this, people saying that, anyone who's a climate change denier is mentally ill or should be prosecuted because climate change is something that threatens all human life, we are told. They're trying to put the power of the state behind it. And again, I would say this is more a blending of church and state than anything we've seen proposed by Christians in recent years. Well, again, the bill died in California, but it can be brought up again, and we'll just have to keep an eye on it because I would not be surprised to see it. Sign of the times, the Emoji Bible is now available. I think George Orwell had it wrong when he proposed Newspeak for his future Orwellian, Big Brother-controlled world, where language is dumbed down to the point where we could not use the fullness of the English language to describe things. By dumbing down the language, people are limited in the range of thoughts that they can express. Well, it's not Newspeak, it's Emoji Speak, I think, is achieving the same goal. And now we have an Emoji Bible. You can buy it for your iDevice, iPad, iPhone, iPod, in the Apple Store. Scripture expressed with emojis. It's marketed as Scripture for Millennials. Wonderful. And one final note, I think this is interesting. This may be coincidence, but maybe not. In France, the government there had called together a conference to try to push for a two-state solution in Israel. Of course, it was done without the participation or approval of the government in Israel, but they were working on it anyway. The conference gathered for talks that looked for ways to pressure Israel to accept the creation of a Palestinian state. The conference ended, and shortly thereafter, the Seine River running through Paris, due to heavy rains in France, rose 20 feet overnight. Parts of the metro shut down, major landmarks, including the Louvre, flooded. Priceless works of art, 250,000 of them, had to be moved to safety to avoid the rising floodwaters. More than 20,000 people have been evacuated in France since the weekend began. 19,000 homes in and around Paris without electricity. Now, coincidence? Maybe. But the response of French President François Hollande is rather telling. He said the weather was a climate phenomenon and thus a global challenge. It comes back to we made Mother Gaia angry. There are none so blind as those who will not see. Well, our weekly Bible study, we got one half of it up already. We're going to record the Old Testament study shortly after I finish gabbing on here, but they will be posted for your participation and hopefully for your benefit, I hope, at gilberthouse.org by Sunday afternoon. Gilberthouse.org every week. 2 studies, one New Testament, one Old Testament, as we go through the Bible in chronological order, the order of the events, in the order of the events as they occurred. So we are moving into the final week of Jesus' ministry before the crucifixion. In the New Testament study, in the Old Testament study, David is solidifying his control over over Israel, but also over his neighbors. Last week we discussed how he subdued the Ammonites, the Edomites, and the Arameans. So pretty soon we'll start seeing the rebellion of his sons. But fascinating stuff as we're working the Psalms into the history of David's life, and you get a better, I think, appreciation of what the Psalms represent, or the mood of David and those around him as the Psalms were recorded. So again, every week we put that up at gilberthouse.org, and we hope you'll join us there. This week on Skywatch TV, a fascinating discussion with Richard Shaw, the filmmaker behind the film Torah Codes End to Darkness. Is it possible that God encoded messages into the Hebrew Bible, the first 5 books of the Bible? Richard makes that case with the program that will be airing on Skywatch TV this coming week. Also available on the Skywatch TV Roku channel as of Monday morning. If you've got a Roku box, which is the set-top box you kind of plug into your television like it's a DVR or Blu-ray player, you can watch it at your convenience. So you'll find that there. And more information about the exclusive online programs at Skywatch TV, including a second interview with Richard that we couldn't fit into the weekly television schedule. Interviews with Dr. Robert Bennett, author of Afraid, Demon Possession and Spiritual Warfare in America. We've got some exclusive interviews that we just couldn't fit into the weekly television schedule, and you'll see those linked at skywatchtv.com. We appreciate your reviews on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever else you hear A View from the Bunker. And of course, we ask for you to give us a like on Facebook. That's where we discuss the issues we raise each week. A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House and released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. The opening theme is by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.